Thanks a lot, Doug, and thanks, Becky, for that excellent description of what's going on. That helps me a lot when you talk about that. If you look at your program, part of the topic for this panel was, will we be singing a different tune in June? That's a great way to describe it, if you think about it. If you go back to 2018, yeah, we were singing a tune. Maybe we weren't all singing the same tune, but the tune we were singing was the blues. It was a rough year. We really struggled. And, you know, any blues message has a little ray of hope. And when we looked at 2018, as we were going through it, we talked about storage a lot. We said storage is getting us through this drought, and not everybody could make that claim, but it was helpful for us to look at storage as we got through 2018. It saved a lot of people, but then we also had that caveat, that's not gonna carry us through another year, because we've got to rebuild storage. But that's part of the blues we were singing. You know, we're also talking about groundwater, and some of our aquifers, a lot of our aquifers are drought proof, and that helps us a lot when we're going through a drought. Some of them aren't. I'm going to talk about a very important one that's not as I get toward the end here. But we did get through 2018 that way, but we said we can't do it again. We can't do it again. So will we be singing a different tune in June? Great question. We don't want to sing the blues, but when we ask ourselves that question, it gets a little bit confusing because it's such a multifaceted question when we think about it. I think about last Thursday morning, a week ago Thursday morning, I left Denver for a meeting in Glenwood, and I decided to leave a couple hours early, which ended up being right on time, because remember what was going on last Thursday morning. And as I drove out of Denver, all I can say is everything was white. The road was white. The mountains on the side were white. The air was white. The visibility was so low. And I thought, this simplifies things a lot. Next Thursday, I'm going to be able to stand in front of everyone and say, we're good. And then there would be applause, and I would sit down. But that did not happen. As I was driving from Vail to Eagle, and this is just quite literally what happened, as I'm driving on snowpack and ice and low visibility. Literally 2 miles later, I was on dry road. Well, that was a stark reminder of the way it happens in Colorado for us. So I wasn't so excited after all. And then Monday morning, as I was driving from the south end of the metro area up here for the CWCB meeting, same sort of experience, if you all recall your commute or your choice to not commute Monday morning. Same thing, snow everywhere, wow. And we got here to the CWCB meeting, and we were looking out on the patio, looking on the picnic benches, where the snow was 10 to 12 inches high. And we're getting that feeling again. But then Russ George in his talk reminded us, people, don't be fooled. This is Colorado. And remember what can happen and what cannot happen in just a short amount of time. So we have to be careful about singing too happy of a tune right now. But what tune can we sing? Again, it's multifaceted, because first we turn to snowpack, and we look at the way snowpack is right now. And you all have seen the graph. I decided I'd be the one to not put up charts and graphs. You all have seen the map with the brown and orange and yellow enough in the last few days, so I won't put that in front of you. But it's starting to look good, at least for snowpack. It's starting to look good when you see those graphs. But it's early. But snowpack in and of itself is multifaceted. Where is it really occurring? Is it occurring in the parts of the state we need it? Is there dust on the snow? Because we know what that does. That can impact the way the snow runs off. What is the elevation of that snow? Where is it occurring? We have that to worry about. But it's not just the snowpack, of course. Temperatures. What about the spring temperatures in the high country that could cause that snow melt to occur more quickly? What about the temperatures as we work through the irrigation season and the crops are really struggling in the heat? We have to worry about that. What about the rain as we get later in the season? Is it occurring in the high country? Is it occurring out on the plains? What about, is it hitting the impervious areas of our urban areas and creating runoff? So we can consider rain, but it's multifaceted in and of itself. What storage did we come into the water year with? Well, not great. If we look around the basins, if we look at our Swazi report from November 1st, it was not that great. We had okay numbers in the northeast and the southwest part of the state, even better numbers from the northwest and the southeast part of the state. Center of the state, not good at all. The Gunnison, the Rio Grande, the Colorado. But that's the storage. What kind of reservoirs were those? Are they municipal reservoirs? Are they irrigation reservoirs? How do they normally operate? Are they used to being empty at that time of year? And so again, it gets more and more confusing, and I got a feeling that I'm just making it more confusing as I talk about it, and we hope to clarify some of that as we develop our understanding during the spring. But you know, just to put one more point on that, we have to look at the compacts and the way the compacts are affected by or can affect the impact that drought has on us. So that we have to look at that. Now, a good example on the reservoirs, we look at Paonia Reservoir in the North Gunnison, and that's basically empty right now. It's very low. But that's the way we expect the Gunnison, or that's the way we expect Paonia to operate, for it to get low, and it doesn't take spectacular snowmelt or snowpack to refill Paonia. So, you know, I can tell you we're pretty optimistic that a reservoir like that will fill, even though it's low right now. So it can be a little deceiving. And similarly, the reservoirs on the Grand Mesa, down low, but I think the outlook for them to fill is pretty good. And again, it doesn't take a spectacular amount of snowpack for those to fill. So we can be pretty optimistic about those. There are some components to that, though, that again, for the snowpack, the elevation is an important piece of it, because obviously the Grand Mesa, you don't get to take advantage of that 12, 13, 14,000 foot snowpack. That tops out at its own elevation, so we need that relatively lower elevation snow for the Grand Mesa reservoirs to make sure that they fill. Got to keep an eye on that. But the optimism is there. The trend is good. Talking about compacts, and again, and the elevation of snow, when we look in the La Plata River drainage and the La Plata compact, we met that compact. It's a helpful way to manage a compact there because it works on an indexed flow at a certain location on the La Plata River, and our deliveries to New Mexico are indexed based on that flow. So it's not that necessarily draconian set amount that we have to deliver, although it's very difficult. But we got through that with Long Hollow Reservoir, which was very helpful. But Long Hollow is down. It needs to fill. And that's another case where it relies on lower elevation snow. It doesn't have necessarily all that higher level drainage to fill La Plata, or I'm sorry, Long Hollow. So it's that third dimension when we talk about the location at which the snow is occurring. We've got another example of that in a minute. But speaking of compacts, on the Rio Grande, another one that our deliveries are based on an index of flows in Colorado. But that's a difficult situation where the compact itself can reach back into Colorado and have an impact on what happens in Colorado, because Elephant Butte Reservoir, well, that's outside of the state. What's the interest to us? Well, Elephant Butte's storage is below 400,000 acre feet, and the impact of that due to the compact is that limits our storage in our post-compact reservoirs. So again, you know, notwithstanding water availability, that's limited. That's a way that the drought can even reach back into Colorado from another state due to the compact. The Yampa River Basin, often I'm looking at Aaron here, often the poster child for great water supply. We've seen those iconic photos in the past where the snow survey is you know, 10 feet over someone's head. Not so in 2018. Yesterday, Aaron Light told us about how the Yampa experienced its first ever call and the growing pains they went through. And the Yampa is no longer insulated from that, if we ever thought it was. But again, it's a location thing. when in the past we've had bad years, and last year where you get that November snow and it shows up and it's great, but it doesn't stick. And then the early December snow, same thing. But this year, we've had the early snow, we've had the November and December snows, and it has stuck. And so that's encouraging, that's good news. It's looking good now. But location, I can say there's snow in Steamboat, and we look up on the mountain, and it's good. There's lots of snow, but there's snow in the city, and that's very important. It's a little bit surreal for those of us that have lived in Colorado for a long time to drive into Steamboat in a bad year, and you're there in January or February, and you don't really see snow on the streets and sidewalks, and we're just not used to seeing that. It can cause us a lot of concern. Not so much this year. Division 5, the Colorado River Basin, reservoirs are looking good for filling. Maybe not quite there for necessarily Granby or Green Mountain, but we'll be optimistic. And again, we have reason to be optimistic. We feel reason to be optimistic. So we'll continue to keep our eye on those areas. South Platte Basin. I had a chance to talk to Jim Yon, and I always like to ask him, what are your reservoirs looking like on the lower South Platte? These are the reservoirs on the plains that fill during the late fall and winter, and on into the spring, maybe just a little bit. And those reservoirs on the lower South Platte, on the plains, are full. I asked Jim, of course, about North Sterling. That's his reservoir, and he said, we're not there yet, but it looks good. And so we're looking good on the South Platte. But then again, we're talking about in the winter on the lower part of the river. And so what does that mean as far as our snowpack for other uses in the South Platte, municipal supplies, et cetera? It's about that location. It's about the type of reservoir. It's about the snow and where it's occurring. Last thing I want to touch on is, again, how this gets to be so multifaceted and not simple to look at. I talked about our aquifers in Colorado being, in many cases, somewhat drought-proof, at least on the short term. When we think about Denver Basin aquifers, when we think about our alluvial aquifers on the Arkansas and the South Platte, one bad year does not impact those aquifers so much. The Ogallala Aquifer, of course, we have a very legitimate long-term concern about that, but that's not impacted by the drought immediately. But we have a really difficult situation in the Rio Grande, and the water users down there that are using all their creativity and all their resources to meet what is ultimately a statutory directive put into their plans to achieve aquifer sustainability. And it's very difficult in the unconfined aquifer to meet that goal when we see them putting all their creativity and resources toward improving their situation, and then one bad year can just wipe out a few years of very hard work. So we just can't look on the surface. We have to look underground and the impacts that occur. And I don't really have a good forecast for what's happening on the for the unconfined aquifer and in the Rio Grande. Again, it's one more case where, at least in an early sense of the word, we're optimistic and hoping for the best. I think at least we can say it won't be as bad as last year, Craig. That's the way we'd like to look at it, but we're hoping for the best. And with any luck, we'll be singing a much better tune in June than we were singing last year. Thanks a lot.
Kevin, thank you very much for being here.